Hey all, here OS Reviews. After Logitech discontinued their Harmony smart remote controls, there have been a number of smaller brands that have popped up hoping to fill that void, and one of them that we're taking a look at today is from Bestjoy. This is their SR001 Universal Smart Remote, which allows you to connect to multiple devices using IR as well as Bluetooth. It has an OLED display on the remote itself, and also this trackball in the middle for navigation, which is a throwback to the days of the BlackBerry, able to connect to pretty much every device, whether it's a TV, DVD player, or other types of appliances you have around the home. And that trackball can also be used to enter a mouse mode, which is pretty unique, I have to say. So you're able to point a cursor on different devices like computer or TV to more easily navigate smaller links, although this particular model doesn't have a built-in keyboard, so text entry is still not going to be its forte. It also doesn't have, say, a built-in microphone, so things like voice input is also not really the premise. Rather, it's still meant as just a universal remote for turning on devices, controlling volume, going into different settings, things like that. There's also an accelerometer that can detect when you're picking it up to automatically wake it up. It also charges using this Type-C but magnetic suction port. Granted, these universal remotes, I have to say, aren't cheap, although that's kind of an average that Logitech have contributed to. So this one in particular sells a little bit north of 150 bucks. So again, whether it's something worthwhile to you, it's up to you to decide. Primarily, I would say something like this makes more sense if you do have a lot of different appliances in your home, and it's confusing to keep track of all of those separate remotes. You can merge all of them into one. But if you are a minimalistic person, you only have one TV, one computer, then it probably doesn't make too much sense. Presented very well, and then we have just a quick user guide that tells us how to download the companion app to then bind and connect. Other accessories here include a wall charger and then also the adapter for the aforementioned magnetic charging port at the very bottom of the remote. So it just sticks in like so. You can easily rotate it. You don't have to align the port each time when you are charging it. So taking a closer look at the design of this remote, it looks almost retro but futuristic at the same time. I know that's kind of an ironic statement, but kind of has a almost 90s vibe to it, but still looks quite clean. Again, a nice polycarbonate build, along with all the toggles for things like the four-way navigation toggle and also that track wheel at the middle, which is indeed really satisfying to press on. It can also be clicked in, exactly the same as a retro BlackBerry of yesteryear. And otherwise, again, all of these keys, they do feel pretty tactile and responsive, although again, this material is going to be a bit of a fingerprint magnet. Again, the side of the remote, this little crevice, that part is backlit. So when you are turning it on, you'll be able to see that entire thing light up, which is an aesthetic touch that admittedly the Sofa Baton doesn't have quite the styling that this particular model exhibits. Just almost makes the entire thing float a little bit in the air, as you can see. And that OLED screen also wakes up to show you some of the basic status information. All the keys here being backlit, making them easier to find and hit in the dark, including that trackball, which is also blue, and I do really like that, I have to admit. And the back here is made of a soft touch rubber material, which makes it quite grippy and comfortable to hold. Here's a quick size comparison with some of the aforementioned Sofa Baton remotes. This is their newest U1 series. You can tell that the Bestjoy is a little bit taller, just primarily due to the aesthetic reason of having everything float on this LED. I don't actually think there's much circuitry going on at the bottom portion, so it's a little less compact. It's also slightly thicker as well, but not too far off. Still feels comfortable enough to hold. So here's the companion app of the Bestjoy Super Remote. We're able to again enter to connect our remote, and it has already found the remote as long as it's turned on there, and it will start to pair. And once connected, we're able to jump into settings to take a look and toggle between options such as whether you want a power saving mode to be turned on, how much you want the sensitivity of the trackball mouse to be, and tapping on manage, you're also able to take a look at what types of codes have been pushed over to the remote. So if we tap on plus, we can start to bind a device. It will try and search through different scenarios in its library by default. So let's say we're in the living room at the moment and we want to connect to a infrared device. I'm going to tap on plus. And from that point onwards, it has a variety of ways for you to learn the code of the original remote. There is an AI mode, which is pretty interesting. Essentially, it'll use the camera of your phone, and then you take a photo of the previous remote, and if it knows the image of that remote, it will then try and learn the code and simulate it automatically, but it's not going to be the most precise. Still, it's an interesting idea. Then you can also search for common models by keyword, and finally, if you're not able to find it in those options, you can learn or mimic the mode just by using the RF function here. Let's say RF remote control function. Tap on the original frequency and then begin to learn. Hold it 20 inches away and then start pressing on the key of the original remote. And there we go. It's actually found the basic functions mapped over, including volume, and also the power key has been learned. This is actually a little bit ironic because we're trying to, again, learn the code of a Toshiba TV from another smart remote, but you get the idea. It's able to then learn what was the IR code transmitted from this remote and clone that. If we're satisfied, we can tap on OK, but I can also add further keys that you want to map from the remote. So for instance, if I tap on another section here, it will try and then prompt you to press on that specific key, and then it will learn that, push it over to the super remote. It will now use Bluetooth to again save it over as a state. So once we are completed, we can take a look at what this will show, and it tells us that we have one device connected which is labeled as other, power, as well as the volume and up and down keys that we have mapped over. You can see the text here being displayed on that OLED screen. So that's actually pretty neat. Now going back to the pairing menu, here's the other option by using the popular models that you can search through their database. So it has all the manufacturers categorized from A to Z that you can search through. Some may have slightly more options, some slightly less. Even some of the smaller kind of Android TV box brands as well, like B-Link you can even find here, but the options are a little more limited as you can see there. Here's an example of another device pushed over, a Sharp TV, and we can see that the display changes to accordingly map to different functions. Here's a demo in a darker environment of what the lights look like, and we can try turning off on a TV for instance, and you can see that it responds pretty much instantly. Working as you would expect when it comes to navigating around the menus, as you can see there. All the codecs and buttons have been mapped properly. And here's a demo of the Bluetooth connection mode, which you can tell it will start to flash, and afterwards we can pair the device, the click remote, and we will try and connect again onto any device, whether it's a TV, Android, tablet, phone that has Bluetooth. You can definitely use that with, and afterwards you'll have the ability to control things. You can enter into the cursor mode just by long holding on the trackball for a few seconds, and then you'll see this icon switch into this pointer. From this point onwards, you'll see a virtual cursor appear on screen that you can then move, and again, the sensitivity of this you can also adjust in the settings, but it does the trick in terms of selecting on smaller icons, and again, it is pretty decent way of navigating along if you want a little bit more precision, although again it doesn't really use accelerometer to act as a gravity sensor or an air remote, which is I think maybe one other input they could consider in order to go back into the menu of selecting the different devices that it's learned. You double tap on the track wheel here and this will bring up this menu where you can then find prompts such as going into again the Sharp TV, the Roku TV, among other devices that we've learned. You're also able to pair two devices at the bottom here as shortcuts for controlling, let's say, smart lights, turning it on or off, as well as smart curtains. And from that point onwards, it works pretty much exactly like any other remote control without any problems. It would be nice to have something like a built-in microphone for voice remote capabilities, or maybe even some form of keyboard just to make it even more versatile. But for what it is, again, a pretty decent universal smart remote. You can check out more details if you're interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Pretty good compatibility. This has been the Bestjoy SR001.